County Board of Supervisors meeting, recorded January 18, 2022.
It's 5 o'clock. We'll call the Portage County Board to order. Roll call.
We have 23 attending, 15 in person, 6 remote, 3 excused, and 1 vacant.
Pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Invocation by Supervisor Honnell.
In honor of the Reverend Martin Luther King, a favorite quote of mine is, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." Our community matters, and we meet to serve our community, to use our resources wisely and well, to represent all members of our community fairly, and to make decisions that promote the common good. We recognize our responsibility to the past and the future, and the rights and needs of both individuals and community. May we act wisely and well. Amen.
If somebody in the room can hear us remotely, wave your hand because we cannot hear you.
Sorry, I pushed the button earlier. I must have went off. Go ahead.
Yep, it's good now.
Correspondence.
Letter from citizen Jesse Glodowski regarding Highway Department policy concerns. Editorial, an American Rescue Plan Act reality check. County Executive Holman.
Next item, we have a presentation from Mid-State President Dr. Shelley Mondyke, Vice President of Workforce Development and Community Relations, Dr. Bobby Damrow, Dean of Advanced Manufacturing, Engineering, and Transportation and Agricultural, Natural Resources, and Construction, Ryan Koski. Boy.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I definitely some days probably feel like I'm 3 people, but we do have Bobby and we do have Ryan, so I'm going to have them go ahead and stand, part of our Mid-State team, along with we have Ben Noose, who is our Stevens Point Dean of our Mid-State campus, and Ben, if you want to. We also have our Chief Financial Officer with us tonight, Greg Bruckbauer, and we have our industry chairs and some other community leaders that are going to speak on our behalf. I believe that there had been a folder that had been passed out to you, and on the left-hand side there is a PowerPoint, and I promise that I'm not going to go through all of those pages, but just trying to give you kind of a real high level of really where Mid-State is at, and really an exciting project that we have going. We say that this is our college's #1 #1 capital project. And I think when hopefully at the end you're going to walk away going, wow, they really have done a lot to be able to make this happen. Because as we talk about where we've come as a college and where we're going, this is something that's crucial to make sure that we can do what we need to do, which is keep our employers and our community strong. So a little bit about Midstate as a whole, and then a little bit about our downtown campus. So we are one of the 16 technical colleges in the Wisconsin Technical College system. We geographically serve 8 counties, pretty much all of Portage County, Wood County, and Adams County. We serve about 7,000 learners a year. 80% of those students are part-time people, so they're working, their mothers, their fathers. We have about 60 programs and 15 apprenticeship programs. We work very collaboratively with our K through 12, where we actually save parents and those students over $700,000 a year because we do something called dual credit, where that high school student can get college credit and high school credit at the same time. But one thing that's really nice about Midstate Technical College and all of the technical colleges is we really are that local college to keep the community strong. And especially for Midstate, 76% of the people that come to Midstate for training, they actually will stay and work in the district. Think about that. What an investment. Almost 3/4, right, a little over, will stay and really be here for our employers. And we know we're in a workforce shortage, and that's something that's really crucial for us to do what we need to make sure that our communities do stay strong. So as we turn the pages, you're going to see the next slide there on page 4 is just Stevens Point as a whole. So again, we have about 34 programs that you can get at our downtown campus. But if you look all the way to the bottom, 1% of our programs or our coursework out of that campus has to do with manufacturing. And then you look and you go, wow, what is Portage County's largest industry? Manufacturing. And one of the goals that we have as a community college is always to make sure that we are putting our offerings in the communities that they need, because people don't want to travel for those offerings. If we don't act, this is going to be a problem for Portage County specifically. And when we look at our district as a whole, manufacturing is our largest industry. Of our 8 counties, 7 of them, manufacturing is #1. So we need to do more. So you will see the next couple slides are all about the collaborations that we try to do in the community. I hope you would say that we're visible, we're a good partner. People come to vote at our campus. We work with all the different partnerships. I always say that you are so lucky because in Portage County, you not only have Midstate, but you have UWSP. And I think that's really the strength of our region, because when you think about it, when people need training, they don't really need to leave the region. And that's what we want. Because what we hear is when people have to go outside for training, those employers get those people. And then they don't come back and they don't work for us. And that's a problem for our communities. So on slide 5, a little bit of background. I have been really the privilege of having to be the president of Midstate. It's going to be 5 years in June. So I came in 2017. And when I came in, I said, we're going to do some listening sessions and really see how Midstate is doing so we can be positioned for the future. And I heard a lot of things. But the main thing that I heard is we've got this worker shortage. And your programs are not matching where your campuses are, because we're one college with 4 campuses: Adams, Marshfield, Stevens Point, and Wisconsin Rapids. So we do what every technical college does. When we hear concerns, we then assess to really say, is that true what people are telling us? And when we did that assessment, they were true. We were losing people that would go to a program to the north or to the south or east or west because we didn't have the program. Mechanical design is a program where you learn how to do AutoCAD. That's a pretty basic program for a lot of companies. We were not offering it. So we would have people go to Madison College, and guess what? Those employers scoop those people up and they don't come back. That's a huge problem. So again, we need to respond. This whole project, the Ameta Center, is based on needs of our community. And that's why we're acting, because that's what we do. We're a taxpayer-based institution. So on slide 6, it really talks about we drew some conclusions. And the conclusions were that we needed to do more. We need to do our part to make sure that we can keep Portage County strong along with our other 7 counties. And you'll see the numbers on this sheet very much show that this workforce shortage is only going to increase when it comes around the fields of manufacturing, engineering, and apprenticeship. And when we look to say, gosh, where should we put this new programming? And we looked at a lot of different pieces of our 8-county district. We needed to put it in the Stevens Point, Plover area because we wanted to have that visibility. We know people will come to this part of the state. We know that people that are now to the north and the south and the east and the west, where are they going to come for training? Here. And then our employers are going to have that competitive edge. So that diagram really shows how we can put all of this programming that is needed in our community under one roof. It's going to be about a 53,000 square foot building. Now, have we done this in another area to give you an example how we follow through on what we do? Yes. When I came in, we had 200 people on a nursing wait list. The only way that we can get more people into a nursing program is two ways. We need to either have more clinical sites to get people in, or we've got to develop a simulation center where people can work on mannequins. So we looked again in our district. Where should we put it? That made sense to do it in Wisconsin Rapids. We had a Spirus Riverview step up. We got a $1.5 million grant. And right now, the whole third floor of that hospital is our simulation center. This was the second need that I heard at the time, which now, of course, has risen to the top one. The next slide is a potential rendering of what this project can be, but it happened because when I met with Portage County leaders and the mayor here of Stevens Point, I said, do you have some vacant buildings? Do you know landowners? How can you help me? And there was a gentleman that stepped up by the name of Wayne Bushman, who has come forward to say, I will donate 6 acres of land for this project in the Stevens Point Industrial Park. Wow. I found out that Wayne was a Mid-State alumni, and the more I talked about what's going to be in this building, I think the more interest he became. But if you know Wayne, he's an entrepreneur, and he loves his community. And he said, I need to step up so everybody else will follow, and you're going to be so proud of your community. They have stepped up. When we talk about this building, it's not just to prepare for today, it's to prepare for the future. You're going to hear about Industry 4.0, 5.0, all about automation. Our employers need us to step up, but right now we don't have the equipment or the location to do it. That's what this whole project is all about. On slide 10, it's really about what's going to be under the roof of this building, and you're going to see it's building the core, machine tool, fabrication, welding. We're going to work with UWSP for our civil engineering program and be able to have that articulation agreement. We're doing new things, we're enhancing things, and we're definitely going to be another location where the community can use our resources. What do our K through 12 partners think on page 11 and 12 and 13? There are 12 superintendents and 3 private superintendents. You're going to see all 15 signatures on these next pages. They have fully endorsed this project because they will tell you that high school students run out of coursework to take around this industry. And that is a problem, where now they can come to our location here in Portage County and be able to get that extra training. So here's the drum roll, everybody. When we started this, we thought we'd have to raise about $7.5 million because we have some state statutes that definitely limit us because they want us as a technical college to do one of two things. Either go out for a referendum and have all the taxpayers pay, or we've got to do it the old-fashioned way, which is roll up your sleeves and do it a grassroots effort. And I hope you will very much see that we have done the grassroots effort because you had just had a Stevens Point Area School District referendum, and I didn't feel it would be the right thing to do. So we dug in, and I'm so happy to tell you that, again, as a college, we have $1.5 million we can put towards a capital project. Our 9-member board unanimously, when I presented this project, said, you've got all the chips, Shelley. We're going to give you the 1.5. We then have the land donation from Wayne, which is so huge. And then we started doing the grassroots effort, which is on the right side of your folder. And you're going to see there are over 80 people that have come forward to give us money. And I'm going to tell you the recap of Portage County. This shows the need, everybody. If we don't do this, this is a huge problem for not only Mid-State, but our 8 counties. We also knew that we had to position ourselves to get a state grant, which we did. We had a very Merry Christmas, if you read the news. Governor Evers was here, presented us with $9 million, but you know what's really special about that? $4 million goes towards the raising of this building, $1 million goes for the equipment, but the other $4 million is for other Central Wisconsin Boys and Girls Club, Create Portage County, CAP services. We made sure that we included all of those entities that are going to support these students so they can be successful. So local industry partners on page 15, we have 3 industry chairs that have really worked alongside me. Remember, I came in 2017. We put the plan together in 2018. These are people that have been with me since 2019. They're probably a little tired of me, right? Don't answer that, everybody. So I've got Wayne Bushman here tonight. I've got Joe Kinsella, and Scott Grahowski was not able to be here, who's the owner of Point Precision. Or excuse me, not the owner of Point Precision. That's Joe. That would be Point of Beginning. They are all Portage County residents. 87 partners have given. We have raised $4.5 million. 4.2 for the building, $300,000 for equipment. Of the 87 donators that we have had, 49 of them are from Portage County, which is $2.8 million. We've had 24 of 87 contributors give over $100,000, and 17 of those were from Portage County. Property donor, Portage County. City of Stevens Point has stepped up, and I will tell you, more people are asking me, what's the county doing for you? Because from an economic investment, with all the formula, Portage County is going to get $1.8 million on an annual basis. Our district as a whole is another 1.5 annual boost because of all the incumbent workforce. When they need to be upskilled, they need training. Those employers don't have dollars to send them to Milwaukee and Chicago. We want to keep them right here. So we have some community leaders that want to speak on our behalf. So we want to make sure that we are timely with that. You'll see the next few is State of Wisconsin, all the people that are getting part of that money. You're also going to see we are in the running to get some equipment through a federal grant, but no brick and mortar for the building. That's why I need some help. I need some consideration. Right now we're over 10 million. I have about a 1.3 gap to be able to get the shovel in the ground, everybody. So really hoping that there could be some consideration there. Hopefully the shovel will go in the ground in the fall, and we will be open for business in fall of 23. So I have Wayne, I have Ryan, if you could come forward, and I also have, we are so happy because we also have the Village of Plover with us as well. We have two of their, the people that make it all happen, and I know Dan wants to say a few words as well. So if you can come forward, please, all three of you. And we're so lucky because we have the Plover Village President as well, Tom Davies, tonight too. But we'll let Dan do the talking. So just briefly.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Wayne Bushman, lifelong resident of Stevens Point. I had a very distinguished honor of getting involved with this with Dr. Shelley Mondyke and her staff when she came out and came up with this idea. And I'm a 50-year graduate of Mid-State Technical College as of June 1st of last year. Very proud of that opportunity to go through Mid-State to get the credentials that I have. And I have my family involved, my grandson. He'll be the third generation. He's going to be 15 years old, and I'm hoping that he's one of the first entrants into the school to carry on the legacy of Bushman Electric. And what we do, and this is an incredible project that we're a little short on, but over the milestones of the controversies that we've had with the COVID and everything else, I think we're at an enormous position. This thing has been in process for about 3.5 years since the inception of this, and we've made terrific progress to get where we're at. We're going to get there, and we sure would appreciate the board, county board, involved with this as part of helping us put the cornerstone on the building. Thank you very much for your time.
Good evening, members of the Portage County Board. I'm Ryan Karnowski. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Stevens Point. I'm here tonight not only as the Economic Development lead for the city, but also on behalf of Mayor Mike Wiesa, who was unable to attend tonight's meeting due to a prior commitment. He asked me to let you know that his commitment to this project has been 100% from the beginning. Originally, Dr. Mondyke mentioned this project in passing to the mayor, and shortly thereafter, Shelley and Bobby ended up in the back of the mayor's pickup, and they went to see Wayne Bushman, I believe like 10 minutes after he had mentioned it. So since then, Wayne has really taken this project beyond what the initial inception was. You just heard a presentation on the importance of the Amita Center to this community. I emphasize community because of the impact this project will have, goes far beyond the city's municipal borders and far beyond the urban area of the county. Training the next generation of workers to enter the advanced manufacturing field is critical to the success of our local and regional economies. Major employers like Amber Johnson, Steel King, and many others will see the ripple effects of this educational facility. As you can see from the list of business partners within the county who have already stand behind this project with their financial commitment. Employees who are well trained, offer local companies efficiencies that push those employees into higher wage brackets. These are employees who will buy homes in Portage County, raise their families here, go to church here, and spend time utilizing our amazing outdoor recreation facilities within the county. Needless to say, there's a larger impact beyond these crucial tax dollars needed to continue city and county services. The City of Stevens Point is already a strong partner in the center, having already committed to donating nearly $200,000 towards this project in site preparation, environmental investigations and remediation, and interstate signage updates. A commitment for $1.3 million from Portage County will further ensure the success of this project and its many employers as we continue to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. As always, the city encourages the county to step up and provide the additional funding requested tonight. Thank you so much.
Well, hello. This is my first official time speaking to all of you. I am not Dan Mahoney, so I'm sorry to disappoint, but I am Dan Alton. I am the incoming village administrator. So on behalf of the village of Plover, Village President Tom Davies and the village board, we would certainly like to stress our support for the program. If any of you know Shelley, and I met her, I think, when she first came to the area, and what I learned about Shelley and her team is a very motivated and driven team with commitment. I know Shelley came from the Merrill area and helped build a police training institute up there, which is really, really, a top-notch program that she put together up there. She came down here to Mid-State, and she has really followed through with her commitment. When I think I met you, you talked about several projects, and we've talked about a police training center ourselves in Plover. We've talked about some other projects, but watching what she's been able to do with her team, amazing people. And I think getting behind a team like that, it's just going to be successful. There's no doubt in my mind, just looking at the accomplishments of what she's already done, that they're going to get this done. And the community has been a part of this. I mean, when I see Wayne, when I see Joe, when I see everybody that's came together so far at a couple of the events we've been to, and looked at the organization, looked at the planning, looked at the thoughtfulness of how she's put this together. This is going to be a really top-notch place for students. I think we're looking over 400 students, additional students a year to be able to be served by this. We're looking over $3 million of increased revenue to the local economy. So this is just a fantastic program from the beginning. Advanced manufacturing, engineering technology, and an apprenticeship center that is going to be, I think, second to none. So I just certainly, from the Village of Plover standpoint, we are certainly behind Mid-State 100%, and I certainly hope that all of you will see the benefit as we have as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just in closing, I would just encourage you to look at all the paperwork that's in the folder. You'll see the blueprint for the building. Mid-State's been around for over 100 years. And I really look at this as being kind of the phase 2 of what we can do for Portage County and Stevens Point. We need to do this because it is the right thing to do, but I'll be honest, with COVID and coming off the pandemic, hopefully we'll be able to say that someday, this is needed even more. And you're gonna see that Governor Evers has put this project on his top 50, Ron Kind has put this on his top 10 list. We were the only technical college that made the top 50 list for the state of Wisconsin, and we're very proud of that. So again, I would appreciate your consideration, and hopefully you can join me at that groundbreaking that I'm hoping to have this fall. And again, hopefully you'll support those Portage County constituents that have already put towards this project. So thank you for your time, everybody.
Shelley, one of the things I wanted to mention, and I didn't realize that and Shelley had mentioned it, that we have the UW Stevens Point here as well, but they have an agreement with the university to allow students to use the dorm.
Yes.
Something I thought was very neat, and unique in this area.
Last fall, we had 11 Mid-State students that stayed at the UWSP dorms. And just for our transfer agreements, just very quickly, we have 21 agreements. So with our programs now, people can go there as junior status and be able to complete here locally. When I started in education, this is going to date me 20 years ago, we were talking about trying to make that transfer happen. It is happening. I was in Madison today, where Mid-State actually got the final approvals to also be able to offer an Associate of Arts and an Associate of Science. So that way we will ensure that everything will be seamless as it goes to the university. So thanks for bringing that up, Al.
Oh, thank you. Uh, when you look through this, you'll see all the people that have decided to make an investment in Portage County. And it's a very diverse group from all different facets of the industries and manufacturing in Portage County, and some sizable amounts. They feel that this is something that's needed for our workforce. That's all you can hear is help wanted, help wanted. We've got to find those people and either have them come from someplace else to our area to be educated and hopefully stay and work in our businesses. So you're going to see some things start to work its way through finance in the next few weeks. So I encourage anybody that if they see anything on the tech college to make sure you stay up on it, because we will probably be looking at trying to finish and see if we can get this thing to come to be. So with everyone's support. Dave, you had a question?
Just a point of
Comment.
clarification and a question. County city expected contribution 1.3 million. The city looks like they contributed about that 300,000, so we're about $1 million. What is the time sequence that you may need from the county for that amount in order to make this fall into place?
So without going too far into the weeds, we are on a tight time frame because we have to be able to let the state technical college know, is that March 15th? March 15th in order to meet those deadlines. And Executive Holman and Jenny Josie have been working and looking at our ARPA funds to try and make that something that we can fit. I always say a round peg in a round hole, try and make it fit, but we had the money, but we didn't have the final answer on what was supposed to be, how it was supposed to be spent, the final rule. We got that January 6th, I believe, 400 and some pages. They've been in contact back and forth with the state on different issues to try and figure out if we can get something and how we can use that. One of the things we get criticized for is economic development. It's very hard for the county to do economic development, and this fits that very well. This hopefully something that's a jewel for Portage County that will continue to pay dividends for years and years to come. So does that answer your question, Dave?
Yes, thank you.
Yep. Supervisor Matt Jakowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hearing what you just said, I assume this will be on a future finance committee and then in front of this board in February?
Yes, and because of the timeline and trying to meet the dates that we need to, we may have to have a special board. I didn't think I'd ever say that, but, and you guys all know me, but we may have to have a special board just because I feel that this is important to make sure we meet some deadlines. And at least the question is put before you.
And I guess, let me preface that with, I see this firsthand, the need. I forgot what I was gonna say. Oh, I watch students and I talk to students after they leave my program. And I said, well, what'd you do? Well, I went to NTC to be a welder. I went to Fox Valley Tech to be a welder. Nobody ever says, very seldom do they say, I went to Wisconsin Rapids. There's something with that river or something that they can't get over there. And I realize the tech college is this side of the river, but there's a block there. And I don't know what it is. And I'm sure your numbers have shown it. If I'm hearing it here in the high school, and even in the junior high, when kids come back and they say, well, I went to NTC for welding. Well, we have a program right here, Mid-State. Why didn't you? Well, I went to NTC. So I think there's a need for it. We need to keep those people here in Portage County. 76% of them stay. 76% of our students that go to Marathon County or Lincoln County, wherever the program is, to North Central Tech, are staying there. They aren't coming back here to Steel King to work for us or wherever it may be.
And I think way back to when I was in high school, I wasn't sure when I came out what I was going to do. I was going to go and be a motorcycle mechanic, and then I ended up at Dalmani for 35 years after that, and I stayed there. So hopefully these students that are unsure of where they're going to go will take a tour of the tech college and say, wow, they got a computer thing on setting robotics. That's cool. I like computers. I'm going to learn that. Change somebody's future and give them an opportunity to better themselves, and it's right here in town. and that's great. So I hope we can all be part of that and help to make this come to be. So,
Do what it takes to get it done.
yep. If there's no other questions or comments, I will give you folks the opportunity to leave if you'd like, unless you'd like to stay. And no, Chris, you get to stay.
The number of people that stay may affect my vote later on.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Everybody. Yep.
Huh? Thanks, Wayne. Good job.
How are
you?
All right. Next item, public notice. Members of the public who wish to address the county board on specific agenda items must register their request at this time with such comments subject to reasonable control of county board chairs set forth in Robert's Rules of Order. Anyone from the public wish to speak on an agenda item? Please state your name and which agenda item you'd like to speak on.
Mary Ann Lashewski, agenda item number 16 regarding the referendum for the Portage County Healthcare Center.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Michelle Cornell, and I would like to speak on regarding the correspondence from Jesse Glodowski. 3.5 minutes. I timed myself.
Yeah,
I can't wait for a future meeting because it will be too late.
yeah, correspondence,
It's really 3.5 minutes.
it's on a
people in there-
correspondence, actually, that's what it is. It's a correspondence and it was information that was passed on to the board.
But it is on the agenda, and it does say that I can speak to agenda.
Reasonable control of the committee chair, and that falls to me. And my question is whether a correspondence, we're getting into an area that is gray, and I've been on the county board for 20 years. I've never heard us take an agenda item on a correspondence.
I understand. I'm seriously, and when people are nervous, they tend to even speak faster. So it might be less time than that.
The problem is if I open the door on this, and I open the door all the time, so I can't. I'm not going to allow it tonight. I have to speak with our corp counsel to have this discussion. But at this time, I've never had a correspondence agenda item to be spoken on.
Right,
I'm
but
sorry.
that doesn't mean that you can't at this time.
Because
could've
then,
almost
if I
been
do it
done.
at this time, then I have to do it every time in the future, and I may not want to. So for that reason, I'm going to err on the side of caution and say no.
My name is Jessie Glodowski, and it's actually my letter. Would you be willing to let me speak to my correspondence at all today?
That was the point of the correspondence, was to let you, that was you speaking, was the correspondence. You wanted to get on as an agenda item, and I said that it's not an agenda item. We talked to several people on the technicality of that. So as a compromise, what I said I would do was you had an option of either your letter going to the board or a third letter that you would create. And it was like, as I understand it, you must have went with the letter that you had previously written. So that was sent on to the board. That was you speaking to the board.
Okay.
At that time. So that was my compromise.
Okay.
To allow you to be able to do that.
Okay, so you won't allow me to talk today?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
On the risk of you saying no again, I'm here to speak about the letter that Jesse wrote also, and I live on Double P. So I hear you.
Anybody else care to make a comment on an agenda item?
Yes, Nancy Rappi on agenda item 16, the healthcare center.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Confirmation of county executives' appointments and reappointments. If there's no objections, I'll take them all at once, as stated. No objections, I'll take a motion. Motion by Supervisor Reeser, seconded by Supervisor Robbie. Discussion. All those in favor with aye? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Confirmation of Executive Operations Committee's appointments. If there's no objections, I'll take those all at once as printed. No objections, I'll take a motion. Motion by Supervisor Splinter, seconded by Supervisor Pataki. Discussion. All those in favor with aye? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. If there's no other objections, we've got a time restraint here, and I ask that I move item 16 up, and we dispense of that first, so that we allow enough time. There's no objections. Okay. Authorizing and approving a referendum to exceed state-imposed property tax levy limits by $4,115,000 for operating the Portage County Health Care Center, AKA Portage County Home. I'll take a motion to put it on the floor. Motion by Supervisor Morrow, seconded by Supervisor Robbie. We have some people that wanted to speak. And Mary, you were first.
Mary Ann Leszewski, 1209 Wisconsin Street, Stevens Point. After I've attended over 5 years of monthly Portage County Healthcare Committee meetings and listening to numerous studies, RFPs, merger plans, remodeling estimates, it's apparent that the only safe, cost-effective plan that would meet today's standards is a rebuild of the healthcare facility. The voters gave us 4 years to study all of our options, and after decades of delaying action, we've reached the end of the road. Even the electrical system capacity of the building is stretching to meet current and growing needs and could not support an HVAC system. If or when we become disabled or are too aged, when we will need skilled care, it'll be the very last time in our life that we will want to relocate 50 to 100 miles or more from our home community. We will need family and our longtime friends to oversee our care, our needs, and to provide recreation and outings away from the facility while we are a resident. If we are a Medicaid patient, the challenge to find a facility either locally or away can make it even more difficult to find a place that will accept our application. Having the healthcare center in Stevens Point also has the added comfort that comes from the staff, the residents, and the visitors being local residents whose families we are often familiar with or have some lifetime connection to us. It's like being home. If we do not have a skilled care facility in our county, assisted living facilities are going to be pressured by families to keep residents who are medically should be transferred to skilled care. They're going to be pressured to keep them in their assisted living facility. Or many will also be pressured to accept admissions to their facilities to provide skilled care that they are not prepared to give. Assisted living facilities are not licensed for skilled care, do not have an adequate patient-staff ratio, or the licensed staff to care for skilled care patients. Having skilled care facilities having assisted care facilities take care of skilled care needs would create a large gap in the health, the care, and the safety of these residents in our community. It would be us falling backwards from the 5-star and stellar reputation of care that we have been so proud to be known of in the county home for the last 100 years. Please support placing the referendum on the spring ballot so we can continue to support those who have skilled care needs or who have exhausted their life savings. Taxpayers gave strong support 4 years ago, and there's good reason to believe they will again. Many citizens are giving much positive feedback in support of the referendum, and they believe this is an issue for the public to decide. Thank you.
Nancy Roppy.
Nancy Roppy, 925 Smith Street. I urge you to pass this resolution this evening, to put this decision at the feet of the voters. As Mary Ann stated, the voters previously told us, we'll give you the money and the time to get your ducks in a row. Come back when you finally know what you're doing, because we're sick of you kicking the can down the road. We've done that. You have to congratulate staff, the finance director, the county executive, the amazing staff at the healthcare center, all of the experts that we've employed to help us to get to this point. And now you need to hand it off to the voters. If you fail to do that, you're basically telling all those people that voted for the last referendum to give us the money and the time to get to this point that we don't care. I've heard many times said, we shouldn't be in the healthcare business. Well, that's the question that we finally need to put to the voters. This is it. Do you want a new building, and do you want to fund it to operate that building? And I think it's going to be a resounding yes. We have a moral obligation to our most vulnerable elderly. I have been stressing that, as Mary Ann said, for more than 5 years. And a lot of it has been a battle. I think we're finally at the point where the voters are ready to tell you once and for all whether they want to continue the jewel that we have had since 1931 and replace it with a shining diamond of a new building that is up to date, from HVAC to technology to the privacy that patients want, to have private rooms and all the amenities that private facilities offer. But the big item is that will take care of you even if you are financially in a position that you can no longer take care of yourself. We will take care of you with dignity. We will take care of you with 5-star care. You cannot get that in the private sector. You can get that here. Our healthcare center went COVID-free for almost this entire pandemic. I think they had one exposure, and they locked that down so fast. It was unbelievable. I don't think there's another facility in this country that can claim what our healthcare center did in the midst of an ongoing pandemic. So give this to the voters now. Approve it, put it on their shoulders, put it on our pocketbooks. I'm ready to pay my fair share. I can't wait for the day that we break ground and the day that we open that facility to take patients. Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you. I believe we have an amendment. Supervisor Dodge.
We have an amendment that was made to the resolution last night at Finance Committee. You have a copy of it at your desk. We would like to amend the amount for subsidy by levy from $4,115,000 to $4,500,000. And that is in the title of the resolution. It appears in the fiscal note of the resolution, and it appears in the explanation of referendum, increasing by a total of, rather than 13.837%, the number 15.132%, which results in a levy of $34,238 and 34 million, excuse me. 238,344, and include the increase from 4,115,000 to 4,500,000. And the county executive and the finance director will give you more information relating to why finance committee chose to increase that amount.
Supervisor Dodge, also on here, it says fiscal year 2023 is crossed out. Which year are we?
2024.
So that's part of your amendment as well? Okay. And seconded by Supervisor Rakowski. Discussion. Okay, so Executive Holman, please. A little more explanation on this amendment.
Okay, so thanks, Marianne and Nancy, for your comments. They're very apropos, and it's good to hear from you again. Thanks to all the people who have put the work in to get us here, Jenny and her team, Marcia, Lynn and their team, and our partners at CLA. What I want to do is go through three things with you just to kind of get you up to speed and tell you how we got here. So the first part will be about the resolution, then I'll walk you through some of the numbers, and then Jenny's going to talk about some things we had discussions with DOR about today. So oftentimes people look at the resolution itself and wonder why is it stated that way? Why is it phrased that way? And I just want to make it clear that the question that's posed is dictated by statute. So we certainly didn't sit down and say, let's try to make this more confusing than it needs to be. But the resolution in front of you, the redlined version that we just walked through, was reviewed by DOR this morning. I sent it to them last night after finance, and so their comments have reviewed it, and it's good to go from their perspective. And so in terms of format of the actual document, we're good there. Now, the numbers, and if you will, I handed out this sheet here, the spreadsheet document. I'm just going to walk through this, and I've spoken about this a few times recently, but it's important that you all understand how we got to the number. And so what this represents is the kind of the front page of a very large spreadsheet where when you make changes in the background, it rolls up to this and changes the numbers. And so this gives you the overall picture of what we're talking about. You'll see the 2020 actual numbers. Those are there to reference 2021, which actually drives the formula. And the formula is what was put together with CLA. We have a lot of in-house knowledge and expertise, but we needed them as a financial advisor within the industry to say, how can we put a near-term projection together to look at what would it look like from 2023 through 2027? And that's what this table is representing right now. Now, this is very, in my opinion, very solid in terms of the work that's gone into it. But I'd say that, and we'll get to this in a second, but when you get past 2027, you really are in uncharted territory. So that's been our big focus lately, and that's why some of the numbers you'll see, like in the bottom right-hand corner, the 4.115, that's part of the discussion about how we got to the 4.5. All the numbers have been adjusted for year-to-date actuals from 2021. That's been reviewed as well by us and CLA. And looking beyond 2027, what we initially did with the number at the end, at 3.289 million, was from the county side, we took our own approach and CLA did their own approach, and then we came together to see where did we end up. Now, what we did is we added a 1.5% to each year moving forward, and what that does is the model itself is conservative. It doesn't include things like intergovernmental transfers, things like that that are not guaranteed, but would certainly play into how the referendum would play out in the future. You wouldn't levy for that amount, for instance, if you got a transfer of $300,000 from the state. But so we zeroed those out. We assumed increases for wages. We assumed increases for things that we weren't, like an unknown, some cushion within the number. And then we add the 1.5% over time, knowing that the further you get away from where we are today, the murkier the water is. But we can take what we know and really put together a solid estimate about what should that look like. So that 1.5% moved the number from where we had previously discussed with Healthcare Center Committee to 4.1 number. Now, what happened last time we spoke with, well, I guess 2 meetings ago with CLA, is we started thinking that when we came at 4.115, CLA came in at 4.5. And really the main difference was how we treated how expenses and revenues would change over time moving forward from 27. So their formula was a little more conservative than ours. And in our mind, what this whole thing is trying to do is establish that exceed the levy limit number. It's not saying that the county is going to levy that number every year. It's going to say, we put together a 20-year model based off that 5-year projection, and that number covers the worst year in that projection. So you could look ahead and say, based on all of this conservative, and detailed modeling, we can say that if the worst year is 4.5 million, you've set that as the limit you can go up to if you need to. Obviously, if even looking at the numbers at the bottom of the sheet in your hands, the number is not 4.5. You would only levy whatever the number was. And so that would change year to year, okay? And there's ways you can use that as well as even an amortization schedule to play around with some of the things so that you're ensuring that you're falling well underneath that limit. So I've been calling it the fiscal umbrella, and what the 4.5 million does is it says it gives you a really good umbrella. It says all the operations for those 20 years can fall underneath this. It takes near-term inflationary concerns into account as well, and it does assume that inflation will, after several years, tail back down to something normal. And if you pay attention to those conversations, the number of 4.5 is in line with the projections through 2032, based on depending on who you look at. But the point is that most of the inflation conversations from the economists I'm reading seem to tie it to a lot of the pandemic and its impacts. And so you would think that as that changes, you're going to get, it might still have a lingering effect, but it's not going to be something that persists for the length of this. Let's see. We understand that the amount, like we've increased the amount each time we brought this forward, and we understand that that could have an influence on the outcome, but that wasn't our main consideration because our focus has always been to present a recommendation to you that's conservative, like I said, it's nuanced, and it can put the county and the healthcare center in a good long-term position so that moving forward, you're never in a position where you're having to find out, where do I find funding? Just so you know, there's also work concurrent to all of this, looking at how, assuming that it would pass, that how would you bridge the center from where it is today through the phases of construction and then into a new facility. And that's playing with staffing projections and staffing adjustments. Those are all going to revise downward based on how you would progress through that. So again, you're still falling underneath that number. And so the 3.997 number in 2023, that number would not be that high. That number is reflecting current staffing, but what you would do is you would adjust the staffing down because your census is going to drop, because the construction phase would move everybody into one wing and you would take care of the rest of the facility and build a new phase one facility portion. And when that was completed, you'd move everyone back in there, and then your census could come up and they would finish phase two. So what that number is saying is if everything was the same as it was today for that phase, then that would be the number, but it would not be that because we're going to adjust.
Quick question.
Yes.
That 4,115,000, now that's the worst case scenario for operating income, and does that include construction cost of a new facility? That's
yes.
It's the way the referendum is worded. There's no mention of a new facility or any of the sort. So
it's a very good question. And so
a 19-year commitment on the referendum, I had a problem because the last referendum was great. They supported us for a 4-year period because I was on the healthcare committee for 2 years at that time, and we appreciated that so we could get numbers better. But when I look at your thing up there, you look at net operating income, and it just keeps getting larger and larger, and there's really no improvement. So it's kind of a big ask for the public. I mean, I'm supportive of the healthcare center. In fact, 2 years ago, that was an option for me for about 60 days. And I'm serious.
Yeah.
But I think the 19-year asked here is a lot to commit, and you're asking for some. If you put it the way it's written here, you're not telling the people you want to build a new center with it. I think the referendum should be split between yes, no operating or yes, no new construction. So everybody has a clear idea, and so nobody's feeling bamboozled in the long run.
Right. And honestly, the predicament you're illustrating is a bamboozle for us, not the public, in the sense that we are not able to explain that because statute dictates the question. But there's two answers to your question I should hit on. One is that concurrent to all this work is also an information campaign where you would put the information out about what's happening to the public through multiple venues and channels. That's already been ongoing. If this passes tomorrow, we're starting, moving that to the next phase. So that piece of articulating what exactly is happening via the referendum will get communicated over the next 2.5 months to the public, so that they would have a lot of opportunities to access that and see it. And even just a couple hours ago, Channel 9 was calling me because they're going to do a story on it. So that would be, story number one. But the question you asked about splitting it is a very good question, because when you look at a referendum, and I even had the same suspicion that you did, like, well, why is it not separate? Why is it not two different questions?
School board referendums are very,
right.
They do that all the time.
Well, the schools are very different. So the schools are different, and the healthcare center is an enterprise, so that also makes it different. And so what happens with an enterprise like the healthcare center or even highway is that if those enterprises need to fund something, the county can borrow on their behalf, and then they have revenues that then pay the county back. So when you look at the healthcare center as a whole, the county doesn't need permission to borrow money. The healthcare center is saying we need the cash flow to pay the county back for borrowing on our behalf. So the building itself and the building of a new facility, coupled with the operational deficits, is what's generating the number here. Because for the purposes of this referendum, and just for the way the county works with the enterprise, it's all bundled into one. You have your mortgage payment and your operations. So that's all considered operations under the referendum.
Brick and mortar is combined with operating.
Correct. And so,
which makes it less clear, but.
Well, I mean, we have the amortization schedule. We can show what the debt service would look like. That's all been taken into consideration. And you saw the construction project and concept budget report. That shows you, that number's much more firm, I guess you would say, because you can kind of say, it's not a real number yet because we're not like designing the building yet, but that concept got us to this point to say, here's what the best and brightest that we've worked with, who have worked in this industry and have built projects recently, are saying the cost of this facility would be. And so then you figure that out, and they were very thorough and they are very detailed in how they got to that number. I mean, they went down to very small details in terms of what they considered to account for. The operational one, that structural deficit, we know that that's been driven in large part, and it's not just for us, it's for anybody operating in this industry. It's driven by Medicaid reimbursement in a large part, because we're one of the lowest in the United States. It's been driven by some of the change or slow to change things at CMS, where, as Medicaid is going to improve, so we built that into the formula. We know that that's already in a biennial budget, so that's baked into this. Also, we know that, as wages go up and things like that, revenues will go up. Just like Social Security adjusted this year for inflation, CMS has to do the same sort of for their rates through Medicare or the reimbursement thing through Medicaid. And so all of that is captured in this. But the thing about the operations is we couldn't tell you, like, we have a good idea within that 5-year projection based on 2021 actuals, okay? But once you get past 2027, there's just a lot of unknowns. And so that's, again, knowing we have a solid projection, that's why we went from the initial number to adding 1.5% to account for some fluctuation so that you would be able to stay under that umbrella. And then after talking with CLA further and comparing our approaches, the 4.5 seemed like the more conservative, a more firm place to operate from. And it would account based on that projection out 20 years. And the 20 years is because it lines up with the borrowing. So you wouldn't want to borrow, the county wouldn't want to borrow for 20 years and then have a referendum for 10, because then we don't have the cash flow for the healthcare center to repay the borrowing. So that's why the 20-year number is what it is. But the $4.5 million accounts for the kind of trend that we see within the actual numbers, and then enough play looking down the road that you're going to account for ups and downs. And in our case, we're looking at the downs. It's very well within reason to say things could go up. Things can change. Medicaid reimbursement could go up. CMS could change how they do business, and that could give the revenues for long-term care facilities a nudge in a more positive direction. But, and I know I'm talking a lot, but there's a lot going on here. So the only thing I'll just close on is that, and I've said this before, that CLA, who we worked with on this, we work with them on our auditing and everything else. They're a very powerful kind of accounting firm. They got a lot of information they can bring to bear. And 2 years ago, they did a nationwide report on long-term care facilities and what are the issues. And the nutshell, outcome from that was to say that regardless of where you were, private or public sector, everyone has found their efficiencies. It's driven by structural things within the industry that are outside of their control. Now, you can traditionally maybe say, well, we would look at staffing, wages. It's never been an issue for the county to go after, but even in a private sector, they don't have the flexibility to do it now because of the workforce shortage. At the county, we also don't get to tell WRS what we pay and what we don't pay. And so as long as the county's operating that WRS portion is part of that overall wages piece. So really, it's a question of saying that this referendum in part is recognizing the industry is not situating anybody very well. But in terms of the number, big ask, little ask, whatever people think, it's the number. And that's what I'm delivering now, is to say, if this is going to go forward, that's the number that all of the work went into generated. And the public, if it passes and we go to the public with this, they're the ones who will say yes or no based on that number. And we'll spend all the time between tomorrow and April 5th educating them on that as best we can, acknowledging that that's traditionally a very difficult thing to do, but there's a lot of good things happening there too.
So for clarification, CLA?
CLA is their name. It's not an acronym.
Isn't it Clifton Larson?
Clifton Larson Allen.
It used to be.
Oh, so it's not anymore.
I believe they rebranded.
Oh, okay.
That's what it used to be.
Sorry.
Yeah, Clifton Larson Allen. Yeah. Sorry.
It's an accounting firm that helped us with the numbers. So
yeah, so they really were able to leverage our lived experience into their industry knowledge to generate the 5-year projection. And then we worked together to figure out how do we want to account for revenues and expenses moving forward, acknowledging that the model itself is already built to be conservative and to not assume that we're going to get government transfers. We're just not going to assume that funding is going to come from COVID relief or things like that. It's assuming none of that. And so, I can't promise you, but I could say that with a conservative model, setting that 4.5, any improvement, and we can't guarantee we get funds from the state, but every year we do and have for a long time. So that would take away from the overall need for the operations. But what's key and most important is that we set that number so that umbrella covers you for 20 years, and that's what we did here.
What's the price? The cost per 100,000.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Whenever anybody talks to me about a referendum, and I didn't see that in the example here though.
Yeah, no, we didn't put that into specifics yet because we were still generating the number. But what I'll tell you is that the current referendum for 1.4 million, people are paying 21 cents per thousand of value. So that'd be like $21 per $100,000 of value for their home. That's what they've been paying the last 4 years. Now, if you just, the 4.5 on its own would be 67.7 cents per thousand. So then if you, for $100,000, you'd be paying $67.70. That's for that whole 4.5. But if you, this is a big perspective argument here, but if you look at, we've been paying 21 and we're looking to ask for 67.7, that net increase is going to be 46.6 cents. So then the net increase, if you will, if it passes and then the voters pass it, the increase on what people are already paying is $46.60 per 100,000.
I've got one question, Chris. In the past referendum, we had if it was set, but if we didn't need that money, they didn't take it, and I didn't see that in here.
Yeah, it's a good point. In the first year, like the current referendum asked for support for operations, and so the very first year for the referendum, we sat down with Finance Committee and the Healthcare Center Committee, and we walked through the referendum and said, what do you actually need for operations? We didn't levy the full 1.4 million because we didn't need it. We levied somewhere around 967,000. So that the balance, roughly $500,000, was left unlevied because the center didn't need it. Now, there were varying opinions about that at the time, but the point was the question asked to support the operations, and so we held ourselves to it. And it's a good question because it's not in here right now, but let's just assume for a minute that that passes out of this body and then it goes forward to the April election. In that meantime, we'll work, and we mentioned this at Finance last night as well, and the Healthcare Center Committee on the 11th, that what our intention, Jenny and I's intention would be to work with those committees to set policy guardrails for the use of the referendum so that it's written in stone over 20 years, doesn't matter who you are. If it comes up that you only need 2.3 million, well, the policy will be you levy 2.3. If it turns out that you have a surplus because of an intergovernmental transfer, that counts against it. So you wouldn't levy that amount. You would say, I don't need that extra 200,000 because the government gave it to me already through this state fund. So then these sort of policies would then frame the use of the referendum over the course of the 20 years. And that keeps, and that's a good communication point with the public too, which, we would include in that broader information campaign so that people know, again, and this is that challenging point about people see 4.5 million and they automatically assume it's 4.5 million every year. But that's not what this is showing you. That's showing you the worst year over the 20. You could look at it, simply like this and say that year here is 4.5. Every other year is going to be underneath it. And because the model's conservative, if you get state fund transfers, it'll drop down again. If things improve on revenue through Medicaid, it drops down again. Our intention was to bring something that was as conservative as possible and speaks intelligently to the funding dilemma, so that the county and the home are both in a place where nobody's scratching their heads going, well, what do we do about this? And just one other wrinkle I could add, which would fall under the same policy conversation, is let's just say hypothetically that next year was 3 million, but then you're getting all this messaging from Medicaid and others to say, well, the trend is going to be for the next 2 years is going to go up. And so you would then say, well, okay, well, we can levy a little bit more in an earlier year to acknowledge the trend and cover yourself. But if you didn't need it, then you would not levy it the following year. So, I mean, you still have play within that umbrella to manage things as you see things play out over time. So it's, I'm sorry I keep using the umbrella as a metaphor. I struggled trying to find a good one, but.
Supervisor Matt.
Thank you, Chair. First thing, just a little point of order. Should we take a vote on the amendment and then talk about it as a whole? Because my question's kind of about as a whole.
This was clarifying the amendment as well.
I understand that, but my question is on the whole. I don't know if we're still clarifying the amendment.
I'm fine with that. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, that's my question. Okay. Actually, I have two questions. First question is, and Supervisor Splinter kind of elated to this. It says a yes vote means that blah, blah, blah. Why can't we put in a new facility on there? Because I worry about somebody looking at this, getting in the voting booth, and I realize we're going to do the best campaign we can. But even the best campaign we can, any marketing team will tell you to reach 50% of the population is extraordinary. So there's 50% of the population that we're not going to reach, no matter how good of marketing we do. That 50% could be the difference in the vote.
Yeah.
Theoretically. And now just so you see where I'm going with this. I don't want somebody to get in that booth and go, well, it's till 2042. I've been in that building. They're going to spend that much money to 2042. They have no idea that it's going to be a new facility.
My question is. So
I feel your pain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think, and Dave, you might be able to speak to this a little bit because, I mean, as I understand it, based on DOR's comments, the thing that is immovable is the question itself. The yes/no explanation, I think if you wanted to put in a new facility in there, you could add that, but also acknowledging that we have to run this by the Wisconsin Elections Commission as well, just for the format and everything else. If they said it was a no-go for whatever reason, we'd have to say no, but if it's okay, then we could leave it in.
And I guess I will make that amendment after we take care of the amendment that's
Okay.
on the floor. My second question I have, I believe it was 5 years ago, under Executive Dreyer. Is that 5 years ago? Under Executive Dreyer. So it's not you, Chris, and Jennifer may be able to answer this. We kept the center functional by borrowing against its unrestricted net position, which means we borrowed against the collateral of the healthcare center. For my terms, am I correct in that?
Jenny could speak to that more specifically. I can say that as it stands now, just for a point of clarification on the net assets piece, is that even if this body passes this and the public says no once or twice, however that plays out, the net assets are at a position, and this is what I think Nancy and Marianne were referring to, that you'd have enough funding to operate the facility through, early summer 23. So, but that's kind of the end of the road. But in terms of the borrowing,
And I guess my second question of this, through this referendum, are we paying back what we borrowed from the net assets? Or are we just losing that money out of our not our collateral, but because we had to use that money, so we borrowed against our own collateral. Are we losing that money out of our reserves?
You want to let Jen take
yeah,
that?
Jenny was around, so she should speak to it. Yeah.
Jen?
I don't have prepared for you a summary of what the net losses and surpluses were in those years to know what those amounts were. What I can tell you is we did budget at a structural deficit, so there were years that we did have to decrease their net assets. What I will tell you about their net assets, though, is any surpluses that they had were really driven by the fact that they got tax money in all those previous years that they didn't return to the general fund too. So it depends how you look at it. I can do a summary for you of what those numbers are. I don't have that prepared tonight. They do have net assets still within their fund, within their financial statements. They still have existing funds. The intent of the number that we prepared and getting you a number for the question didn't include the concept of maybe paying back those previous years. We had talked about the idea of how we would manage funds for when, say, we levy, say $3 million and they really needed 3.5, how you would make up for it in a future year, or perhaps, you levy the 3.5 million and they only needed 3 and we had a surplus. So how you would leverage those changes every year to kind of manage throughout the lifespan of the referendum phase, I guess. And I don't know that that specifically answers your question, but hopefully it just provides maybe some context.
Matt?
Yeah.
Okay.
Clear as mud.
Okay.
I just wondered if we were
I'm sorry, I don't have a history for you in front of me of what those financial statement, kind of operating losses are by year in front of me.
All right. Is there any other discussion right now? Otherwise, we've got an amendment to dispense of first. Let me get rid of that, Chris. Oh,
Can I just ask?
Go ahead.
Because the DOR portion, I don't know if Jenny thinks it's relevant now or after.
Jenny?
I don't know that it's pertinent to the number.
Okay.
Okay. Back to the amendment. We have a motion and a second, and that's dealing with the change from basically from the 4.115 to 4.5 and the other numbers that were stated as well. If there's no other discussion or objections, all those in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. Opposed? Amendment carries. Supervisor Matt Jakowski.
So under the yes vote explanation, I would like to make an amendment that we somehow incorporate in there, and I would leave it up to staff how you want to elegantly word it, in a new facility. Because I think that's a very important part for the voters to know. Like I said, we're going to do a huge media campaign, but there's going to be people we miss. And if we put that in there, I think that will inform people that, hey, we're not doing it in the old building. It's not for 20 years in the old building. It's going to be a new facility that's all part of this. So I would make that amendment with that staff incorporate new facilities. I don't think we need to vote on tonight the exact wording. I think we can leave that up to staff to do that wording. That's going to be part of my amendment, that the staff does that wording. I'm sure that's Executive Holman, Marcia, staff. It can be anybody that's county staff.
So before I call for a second, Chris, we have latitude to work with in the yes or the yes and the no area. Is that correct?
I believe so, and we have time, so like, if this passes tonight, then we still have to send it to WEC, but in that interim time frame before we have to put it into the clerk's office on the 25th, we can verify and get that sorted.
Matt,
Let me further clarify my amendment, that adding it only if allowed by WEC. Does that work for staff? Chris, does that work for you?
Yep.
does it make sense to have it in the no as well?
The no kind of says what it says. The no,
No is a no.
no, no,
Okay.
no actually says that a no vote means the Portage County Healthcare System will continue to operate in the future is uncertain and unknown.
Okay.
If you put
I just
a new facility, it doesn't fit, or in
just
an old
asked.
facility.
I asked the
you know.
question. Supervisor Moore.
I'd second
Oh.
that, because that's all I could think of last night in finance when we were talking about it.
How are we gonna know?
Wording is so confusing. When people are gonna be in the booth going, we have a health care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very good point.
Or does it cost us this much every year to run it?
Yeah, you don't know.
So I have a motion and a second. Jenny, you have a comment?
The only, my only comment, because it's kind of been brought up tonight too, is the only thing that we need to stay away from in that section is referring to like debt service, because you're not asking permission to authorize debt service. That's already your authority to do. So as long as we stay, referencing the building and a facility and not about the debt, I think you're fine.
Okay, so we've got another amendment. Supervisor Matt Jakowski, second by Supervisor Morrow, to have staff add new building or new facilities and give them some latitude on that on the yes question. So all of those in favor with that amendment, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Back to the original amendment, resolution as amended twice. Is there any other discussion? Supervisor Scott Syke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to preface this with, I'm going to vote for this to go to the voters. I believe that that's where it needs to be. I believe, the question is, the question, the way it's stated per the statute. The one thing that I want to bring up and I want to have a discussion on is in some of the committee meetings I've sat in and listened to this, there's been education, that our role is to educate the people we represent, not to advocate. Okay, and I believe that this issue is so close to the heart that it's going to be everybody's, they're going to vote their heart on this. The one thing that was concerning to me with the educate and advocate, I'm all for the education. The issue I want to bring up is the fact that it's been talked about that if this fails in April, that they would then bring it back again in November. To me, and this is where I want to have the conversation, that feels a bit like advocating. So, and that's my personal thought, and I want to bring it in front of this body for discussion. Because if I'm listening correctly, by the end of 2023, if this doesn't pass, that our Portage County home may be closed. Is that correct?
Be sooner than that.
Be sooner than that. So again, I am all for the education part of this. I am all for this going to the voters. I am all for the conversations that need to be had. I'm a little reluctant that if this is voted down in April, that they bring it back. I would like to see if there is a concern that we have more people showing up for the midterms in November, the general election, and we have a better chance of this passing, then I would like to see it take place at that time. I would like to have some discussion on that, one or the other, not both.
So I have only heard about the November was when we talked about whether we were going to have the referendum question in April or in November. I have not heard someone say that if it gets defeated, we'll bring it back in November.
Well,
I have not.
It,
So.
Chair Hague, if you go back to Executive Holman's earlier comments tonight, he did slip that in there, that once or twice. Okay, so that was already tonight. I caught it. It is on the record, and we had talked about it, and I believe it was one of the finance committee meetings that came up. I asked the question. So it has been discussed. It has been bantered around between the healthcare committee or finance. I'm not sure which one. Maybe the Executive Holman could clarify, maybe both, maybe others. But it has been in discussion, and I think that discussion needs to take place here on the board floor with everyone.
So just to clarify, the conversation about April or November, or maybe April and November, that happened months ago at the Healthcare Center Committee in terms of like which direction did you want to go. And so there's no plan in place because, there's two things to consider. One, it's a new county board in November, and this board can't tell that board what to do. But the people who would put it on the board in November is not me, it's not the Healthcare Center Committee, it's the board. So in a way, that question isn't germane to this one, but I understand where you're coming from. So I think that the plan as it's before you is for April. Now, it being talked about as a possibility, that's just, it was in a conversation like this one at the Healthcare Center Committee. It wasn't formulated as part of the overall plan per se. So, but that being said, having a discussion, there's nothing wrong with that. I just want to make it clear that the only way it gets onto a November ballot if it failed in April is if this body approves it.
Jenny?
I just thought that now the timing of the questions based on information today from DOR probably is a good segue to the information that's on the ballot and how that affects the calculation of the levy limit that is important for you to know as you go forward and have this conversation tonight. So one of the things we've been doing, Chris and I, has been working with the Department of Revenue to make sure that the information that we have for the question is accurate and correct and it meets their standards for how the question needs to be proposed and written. So we started that work early. The way the question is worded and the options for how you can ask the question is set by statute and very rigid. So a lot of times people get concerned about how the question's written. We don't really have a lot of say in how that happens. We just have to use the model that is set by statute. In order to draft the question, more recently, there were some statute changes that allowed counties to ask for a spring ballot, the question as well as some verbiage changes, which was intended to make the process easier for counties going forward. One of the things that we do when we calculate the amount for the question is we either take actual numbers that we know for net new construction and the allowable levy limit. And if we don't have actual numbers, in this case in April, the only numbers that we have are from our last budget. So we use those numbers we have. So in this scenario, we use those most recent numbers, and then we can add in any adjustments that we have for the levy limit. Now, the adjustment we have every year is debt service adjustment. So looking forward, I can take the 2023 levy or debt service amounts that I know that we have for the principal and interest payments we need to make. I can make that adjustment, and that is calculated and baked into that total that you see in the question, which adding in the referendum amount comes up with the percentage increase. In our review with the DOR today, it was found out that the debt service adjustment that we included has to be the same debt service adjustment that we use in the fall or in the November when we adopt the levy. So that debt service amount is set. The issue with that is we planned for debt service this year. We planned for highway projects and a wetland mitigation bank project, and both of those were to be levied for. We were going to issue debt and levy in 2023 to pay those. We can still issue the debt, but setting this question the way we have, we can't levy to make those debt service payments in 2023 like we would have wanted to. When I talked to DOR, they just expressed that that's the problem with spring referendum questions, is you essentially have to have your your budget done and those things known ahead of time for the following year. Most of today, Chris and I have talked about, okay, so what are our options? You know, we can still do the April question. We have to think a little bit differently about how we finance those projects then. And we've come up with alternatives in which we can do that. For highway projects, you know, we've been, you know, borrowing 1 year and using vehicle registration fee the next year. We might have to flip-flop that. We might have to use some of our own capital improvements money to fund it for a year. We could issue the debt and not have a principal payment in 2023. Put in our documents when we issue debt that we don't want a principal payment till 2024. We can look at some ARPA funding. I mean, there's a variety of things that we can do, but I think it's important for this board to know that by setting the question in April, we've locked ourselves into, we can't do any more adjustments to the levy when we do our budget. Now, there's other things you can make adjustments for, you know, transfer of governmental service, government services from one government to the other. We've done that in the past. I don't see anything on our radar, but it would exclude us from doing that for the upcoming budget year. So I kind of went through that kind of quick. I hope I hit the highlights of it. Chris and I, like I said, we've worked on it all day. We've talked to DOR. We've talked about alternative kind of financing plans and options, but it does kind of tie your hands as a board in terms of what you might want to do by setting this levy question amount earlier in April than if you were to do it in November. So.
I've had a conversation with the executive today on this very issue, and my big question was to make sure that the board and the county, that we had options and or we had everything covered that we needed to for our projects that we need capital for. I'm sad we have that covered and or we have alternatives and options to be able to do that, to be able to have this referendum question in April and not in November because of the levy limits that it would place on us for the cap for 2022. So, Supervisor Gifford, you had your hand up?
Yes, I did. I know last meeting I had asked Executive Holman for some kind of a fact sheet to explain the need for the referendum, but I see that the committee itself has done a good job providing that, so you don't need to do that. Last night I was invited to give a report on what the county is doing to the Park Ridge Village Board, and just happened to have my packet with me so I could, and I did use some of these paragraphs out of here to try and explain, you know, the need for the referendum and so forth. And then following the advice of Corp Counsel, I carefully worded myself to say that I would hope our village has a huge turnout in the election. And I think countywide we're going to have an enormous turnout because there's so many contested seats in all the different levels of government. So I just said to the board, you know, I'm not going to tell people how to vote. I'm just going to tell people that they should vote, you know. And then it is up to And we have a real excellent grassroots civil society, I would call it, group that Nancy and Joe Roppy have been running to save the Portage County Healthcare Center. And I think this is a good time for such a group which can advocate. And I'm also following up on Supervisor Soik's point that we can educate, we can explain, but what we don't want to do is cross that ethical line of people running for county board should not also be running for the referendum, you know. And really, if you show up at a voter's door and you're telling them not only to vote for you, but also how to vote on this referendum, they're going to get a little resentful of you being that presumptuous. So I think the committee did a good job explaining this here. I'm not going to quibble about the dollars, but I do think that it's kind of the job of the activist groups to get out and advocate. You know, what we shouldn't do, they can do. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anybody online?
I just want to make sure that people don't have questions about what Jenny was discussing, because essentially, like what she says is that it's locking in our debt service. So for 2022, there'd be no other big projects. Now, historically, we don't have things pop up that are really big projects that happen. When they've happened, they've been things that we've opted into. It wasn't a surprise. So the precedent doesn't suggest that you would run into that situation. And if it's a smaller thing and you ran into something, you're going to take care of that with probably a fund balance anyway. That's SOP. The thing about it would be that as part of the like, for instance, one of the questions somebody had about was the buildings conversation. And so I talked to the architects and said, what's the projected timeline? We're assuming nothing in terms of where it's going because we're still in the middle of that conversation. But just in case that question was in your mind, the projected calendar wouldn't put the county in a position of getting towards bidding until summer of 23. So at that point, you're already in a position where structuring your debt to start paying principal in 24 is not a big deal. So that one wasn't a consideration. This afternoon, we talked with Nathan about highway projects and about the wetland project. There's a couple different strategies that Jenny was talking to there. But the point is that by locking it in, we'll be telling ourselves, well, we're going to figure it out. You know, like I asked Jenny before the meeting, like out of 100, where are you at on confidence level? And I said, I'm at about 85, you know, based on how the day has gone. And so I think we're both at that same level, just because the whole thing from DOR is very convoluted, because that 34 million number in the question they're implying won't change, but that's not true. It will change. It'll change because net new construction won't be the exact same that it was this past year. It'll change because it's going to change because the question itself doesn't include bridge and culvert aid or EMS. Those are probably going to go up just to account for cost of doing business. So the way that DOR is talking about it, the statute, and they've been very helpful, I should say, but we have big questions about the intent of the statute in terms of implementation, because counties generally are not constrained when it comes to debt service, but what they're saying the statute does is it imposes a de facto constrainment on debt service to the county. But that was our big question. Identify the issues, figure out what the workarounds would be, and then figure out what our comfort level is. So it would not be business as usual for those projects, but after talking with everybody, we feel confident that we'd still be able to find a way to do it. It's just that you wouldn't be in that traditional borrowing situation that we would normally be. And it's a 1-year thing because, again, that's the silliness of it all, is that for 1 year they say you can't change anything, but after that year, you know, do it, you can change what you want. It's weird.
Supervisor Soik, then Supervisor Johnson.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that up, Executive Holman, which leads me into the next question. So the levy would be set for 2022. We would not exceed that. Everything's going along smooth until we get into 2023, 2024, or sometime after, when we are looking at our new jail, our new justice center. So now, not only are we being hit, worst case scenario, $70 per 100,000 for our healthcare center, but we may be looking at the same type of cost for a new jail or justice center or government building or whatever that should look like in the future that we already have had discussions on and looking to move forward with. So in full disclosure, within a couple year span, we could see worst case scenario. We could see $150 to $200 per 100,000 on our property taxes. Is that fair to say?
I think the best answer to your question is in two parts. One, undoubtedly, the referendum, if it passes, will have an impact on debt service.
Correct.
And that's, to Splinter's question earlier about what does that cost? And so that gap number of 4660 would be the increase on what people are paying now per $100,000. Now, the bigger question, which is a good one, and we've put a lot of work in at finance with this, is looking at how to offset the debt. And that's been the county's policy for some time in preparing, because the county's been talking about bigger projects for some time, preparing the debt service to be in a position so that when you took on that debt, assuming you did anything, that your other debt is positioned to drop off. So you're not just piling it on top of current debt. This drops off and you back in with the building portion. And what that does
just like if this referendum failed, that $21 per 100,000 would drop off our
Correct.
tax bill.
Yes, you're correct. Yeah, but the point about this, the overall debt management strategy is that Jenny and finance have put in probably years of work on maintaining that debt service planning so that if the county board moved in a direction of a new building, that you're really mitigating the impact to the taxpayer. Like I said, we would change from a short-term aggressive payoff to something more longer-term, more traditional when you're actually building buildings. So that would go away and be replenished. It wouldn't be a pile on top, on top, on top. So there's been a lot of care put into that question. In terms of being able to borrow, this doesn't really impact it based on what I talked with the architects about today. So if everything went perfectly smoothly, you would say start looking to borrow money in the summer of 23. And so the impact, because we're talking about the 23 budget here too, in terms of the debt service. So that 23 midsummer, you would be able to issue the debt and then just situate your payment to 24. And so we talked with our financial advisors and said, is that a big deal? And it's not a big deal. You can do it. It might change the rate slightly, but working with a smaller number, it's not going to be a significant number that would worry people.
Okay, thank you.
The other
Supervisor
thing
Johnson. Supervisor Johnson. Where is she?
Muted.
You're muted.
She's muted.
The famous last words, you're muted.
Yeah.
If Jenny has something to add to that, I think that's probably more important. So Jenny, if you want to take my time and I can circle back after you're done.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. So I just, you all know that I've been a part of this for almost 6 years now, and it's been a long journey, and there's so many people to thank, but the committee has really worked in earnest the last 4 years, and I want to thank every one of those members. I want to thank everybody involved, administration and staff, all of our experts, the finance committee. I feel as though we did exactly what we were supposed to do, and what the voters allowed us to do was follow the facts and get to a point where we had a plan. And it happened because we had a diverse team. I spent yesterday at a leadership training, and they talked about diverse teams and how diverse teams actually produce better outcomes. And I think that's what's happened here, is we've had people from both sides, not certain about it, not wanting to do this, that, or the other thing, but we came together, and this is the outcome. And it's been such a pleasure working with everybody and listening to the challenges and figuring out how to develop solutions. This has been an absolute pleasure, and really a highlight for my life. So thank you for the opportunity to serve, and thank you to everybody who's been involved in this.
All right. Supervisor Splinter.
Before we get off the healthcare committee, Totally. I'd like to acknowledge the staff at the healthcare, which has avoided any COVID outbreaks of any sort. And those are our heroes in our community. And the leader of our heroes is sitting over here, Marcia. She doesn't make herself known too often, but she is, I would say, largely responsible for having a 5-star facility and maintaining it without COVID inserting its nasty head in there. And thank you, Marcia, for all your work, and your staff behind you.
Supervisor Astro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we've questioned this out enough. I'd like to call the question, and if we could have a roll call vote, please.
I'm going to try it without a roll call first to see how it goes.
There's an amendment still on the floor that we haven't voted on yet. We haven't voted on my amendment.
Oh, we haven't? Okay. All right. So we have a second on it, though. Was by Julie. All right. So if there's no further discussion on the second amendment, on the amendment only, and that was to add the building to the word and let staff do that. On the amendment, all those in favor with aye? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Back to the original resolution as amended. All those in favor with aye? Aye. Opposed? Resolution carries. Thank you. Number 11. Reorganization of issuance of passports from Clerk of Court's office to Register of Deeds office that results in a new position request and interdepartmental transfer of funds.
Resolution number 189, 2020, 2022, submitted by the Finance Committee. This resolution authorizes the Portage County to fund and participate in the tourism. I've got the wrong one.
Nope.
Sorry. Resolution number 1, 2020, 2022, submitted by the Judicial, General Government, Human Resources, and Finance Committees. This resolution authorizes the transfer of passport issuance from the Clerk of Court's office to the Register of Deeds office and authorizes the interdepartmental transfer of funds. This is considered a budget adjustment resolution and therefore requires a 2/3 supermajority vote.
Motion by Supervisor Matt Chakowski, seconded by Supervisor Medine. Discussion. Supervisor Matt Chakowski.
I promise I'll be brief, Mr. Chair. I just want to take the opportunity to thank Clerk of Courts Roth and Register of Deeds Wasinski for coming up with this idea. It was a truly thing. The county was talking about getting rid of passport services. We went off from here in this building anymore. Between the two departments talking together, one said, hey, it's about a half-time position. I got about a half-time position I need to fill. We made somebody a full-time employee. We're going to keep the passports here in the building. They no longer have to go up to the second floor and be with court traffic, which makes it even a better situation. I just want to take the opportunity to thank them for bringing us to this, and any other department heads that want to bring us stuff like this, keep it coming.
Supervisor Johnson, did you have your hand up? No, okay. I'm trying to keep an eye on everybody. No, I'd like to echo the same thing, and I had talking to Cindy here a while ago and told her that I thought it was great the two of them came together to work this out, and there's actually some money savings in it as well, so that's great to try and find some options and come to a resolution, so that's great. So there's no further discussion. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Thank you, ladies. Number 12, authorizing participation in Unique Wisconsin campaign.
Resolution number 189, 2020, 2022. This resolution authorizes Portage County to fund and participate in the Tourism and Economic Development WCA's campaign.
Motion by Supervisor Rakowski, seconded by Supervisor Splinter. Discussion.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Morrissey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question for staff or whoever can answer it. Is this in addition to our normal WCA annual fees?
Yes, that's the short answer.
Thank you.
The MOU outlines what it involves, and so then that's kind of what you're getting. And then if you have more questions about it, assuming it passes, I can explain kind of Discover Media's approach to how they're going to do it.
I liked your first answer. Is there any other, does that answer your question, V?
It does. It just puts us at, don't we pay them about $60,000 a year for our normal membership? So it puts us at about $130,000 a year for WCA stuff.
Yeah.
This is
So,
one,
all right, Supervisor Rakowski.
this is one-time funding, correct?
Yeah, this is a one-time fund, so.
They're going way above and beyond.
Yep, so, all right, if there's no further questions, all those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Confirming appointment of Shane Gulnick as the Portage County Information Technology Director.
Resolution 190, 2020, 2022, submitted by the Finance Committee. This resolution confirms the appointment of Shane Gulnick as the IT Director.
Shane, are you in here? Can you stand up? And how bad did I get that last name? Close. Gulnick. Okay, thank you. Al Hawker has retired, and he's our new Al Hawker 2.0. We can actually say that. Fits perfect. So,
Welcome, Shane.
yeah, welcome, Shane.
On this first.
So,
40 years you've been retired.
we got a motion and a second. All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
I missed the motion on that if we had it.
Oh, you're asking me a lot. Who made the motion for? Oh, did I not? Did I not have a motion on that? I must have got caught up in it.
Nobody made the motion. We were congratulating him on his new job before we voted on it.
Wow. Okay. So we'll do a redo on that. So I'll take a motion a motion by Supervisor Reeser, seconded by Supervisor Splinter. Now that we've had the discussion and the vote, we'll do it again. All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Number 14, approving and authorizing acceptance of donated funds and a 2022 budget adjustment for safety equipment for the Sheriff's Office Operations Division.
Resolution number 191, 2020, 2022, submitted by the Public Safety, Emergency Management, and Finance Committees. This resolution authorizes the acceptance of donated funds and budget adjustment for the Sheriff's Office. This resolution is a budget adjustment and requires a 2/3 supermajority vote. There are cases of scrivener errors to correct throughout the use of the apostrophe S in sheriffs, and to add an S to the word constraints in the 5th whereas clause.
Dave, do we need a motion on this amendment on the scriveners?
We can do that by consensus.
Okay. So if everyone agrees with the errors that were stated by the deputy clerk, I'll say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Corrections are approved. We don't need a motion and a second on those, as I understand it. Somebody. Supervisor Zastro, and then.
Is this the motion on this?
Oh, you're looking for a motion. I'm saying.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking for a motion on the resolution. So Supervisor Zastro, seconded by Supervisor Laddick. Discussion. I think it's great that we got this opportunity to be in our. So it looks like our stuff was at its life's end anyway of the equipment. So that's great. Came at perfect time. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor with aye? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 15, amending Portage County Code of Ordinance, Chapter 2.1.4, entitled Parking.
Resolution number 192, 2020, 2022, submitted by the Space and Properties Committee. This resolution amends the Portage County Code of Ordinance, Chapter 2.1.4, parking. There's also a scrivener's error on this one. The third whereas is missing an E.
If there's no objections, I'll take a voice vote on the Scrivener errors to make those corrections. All those in favor of making those corrections, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Corrections are made. Back to the original resolution. I need a, do I have a motion? No. I need a motion and a second. Motion by Supervisor Dubek, seconded by Supervisor Medine. Discussion.
Question, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Moresi.
Thank
Supervisor
you.
Moresi.
I'm just wondering if the parking prohibitions and permits, if actually it includes county board supervisors to park in the lot without a permit or not, so we can, like it does for staff.
So your question is can supervisors park in the parking lot without a permit?
Correct, because it says that staff is able to get a permit as staff, but do supervisors also get that same benefit, I guess? Or do we have-
I know.
Boy, I don't know. That one I
Looks like Supervisor Jankowski has.
Mr. Chair,
yes. Don.
we discussed the staff was, the supervisors were part of the staff, so the supervisors would get a permit, as would the staff.
Yeah, there is no cost to it anymore, so if someone is down here and wants to park in that parking lot, I would imagine they would see the clerk's office and they could get a permit. So, then you can park in the parking lot. We want to make sure that people have access to our building. More to come on that. There's no Supervisor Reeser.
Just one quick question. I didn't, I may have missed it, but I didn't see handicap parking addressed. It looked like it was, the polygon was drawn around the handicap parking. And I'm wondering if that means that it remains unchanged, or are there changes to handicap parking?
Where are you talking about with the polygon?
I would be talking about behind the annex.
It's not painted on the blacktop, is that what?
No, I mean the drawing.
Oh.
The drawing cuts out the handicap parking. At least one stall. There's two stalls, but I think only.
There are two by the ramp, so if you've got a wheelchair, you go right up. Yeah. I pick up by the door.
But there's two on the back as well. There's two on the door.
There's two on the back side, yeah.
Yeah. I just, my question is, do those remain unchanged?
I don't think we're changing anything with the parking at all. This is just policy, so, and I think those were just added so that they had some reference points, and it may have been, drawn, as a mistake, but as far as, myself and the rest, we were not trying to eliminate any handicap parking if that was the case.
Mr. Chair, if you look at it, and maybe you have a bad copy because sometimes copiers are that way, you can see the handicap parking is included. The part that's excluded is that loading dock area. If you look, because you can, on my copy, you can see the little crosshatch for the van accessible, and you can even, if you look real close, see the wheelchair in it. And I realize sometimes you get a bad copy that runs off a copy machine if it's the 15th one that day.
Ain't broke, don't fix it.
That's not the intent. It wasn't the intent to eliminate any handicap parking, so.
Great, I'll withdraw the question.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? If not, we have a motion and a second. Kayla, you had a comment?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I was just trying to say there was no intent.
I see. Okay.
handicap positions. It was just a square that I asked planning and zoning staff to draw over the parking lot so that people knew which parking lot you were talking about.
Just a visual aid, so yeah, okay, thank you.
Yep.
If there's no further discussion, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor with aye? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The last item is discussion only. We have had some incidents here lately, and this is moving forward faster than we had hoped. And one of the things we wanted to do was have a video to try and let everybody see what they should do during a situation. We ask everybody to watch this quick video. It's only 5 minutes long, and we will have more to come in the future. So, whenever you're ready, Lee. And I don't know if the rest of you know was that we had an incident at the Health and Human Services meeting where we had to have 3 deputies come over there, and one individual got walked across the street in cuffs. So things are, for whatever reason, getting ramped up, and we need to make sure that we're cautious both to protect yourselves and others. So we're going to continue to try and find ways to find the answers to what we can do to be safer for everyone.
It may feel like just another day at the office, but occasionally it's more like an action movie than reality. The authorities are working hard to protect you and to protect our public spaces. But sometimes bad people do bad things. Their motivations are different. The warning signs may vary, but the devastating effects are the same. And unfortunately, you need to be prepared for the worst. If you were ever to find yourself in the middle of an active shooter event, your survival may depend on whether or not you have a plan. The plan doesn't have to be complicated. There are 3 things you could do that make a difference. Run, hide, fight. First and foremost, if you can get out, do. Always try and escape or evacuate, even when others insist on staying. Encourage others to leave with you, but don't let it slow you down with indecision. Remember what's important. You, your stuff. Leave your belongings behind and try to find a way to get out safely. Trying to get yourself out of harm's way needs to be your #1 priority. Once you are out of the line of fire, try to prevent others from walking into the danger zone and call 911. If you can't get out safely, you need to find a place to hide. Act quickly and quietly. Try to secure your hiding place the best you can. Turn out lights, and if possible, remember to lock doors. Silence your ringer and vibration mode on your cell phone. And if you can't find a safe room or closet, try to conceal yourself behind large objects that may protect you. Do your best to remain quiet and calm. As a last resort, if your life is at risk, whether you are alone or working together as a group, fight. Act with aggression. Improvise weapons. Disarm him. And commit to taking the shooter down, no matter what. Try to be aware of your environment. Always have an exit plan. Know that in an incident like this, victims are generally chosen randomly. The event is unpredictable and may evolve quickly. The first responders on the scene are not there to evacuate or tend to the... They are well trained and are there to stop the shooter. Your actions can make a difference for your safety and survival. Be aware and be prepared. And if you find yourself facing an active shooter, there are 3 key things you need to remember to survive. Run, hide, fight.
Okay, I guess, like I said, there'll be more to come. There's a lot of work to be done in this area and try and come up with some conclusions and some options for people, but they will have more discussion. But with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Motion by Splinter, seconded by Dodge. All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned. Thank you.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.